Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tassinix. This is going to be the start of a new inter-season series. We're going to do a wrap-up video on each season, so we'll do 3 vs. 3 here, covering Season 17. Let me pull up my notes, make sure my Discord is muted so I don't have people blowing me up. And, yeah. Alright, so let's get moving here. What was first on my list? Okay. Alright, so we're going to do wrap-ups and takeaways here. So, item number 1. When using C on offense. So, starting out the season, I was using C with Watt and Sith Empire Trooper. And that's too safe, because you end up just losing too many banners from that. You don't need that. I've really transitioned over to C armor. Unless you judge the situation where you really need to have the debuff dispel from Watt's tech, I think you can get away with armor in pretty much every situation. I've gotten away with that against Queels who are putting Shaak on me. The protection restore just becomes overwhelming. And, you know, as time goes on, you're still able to just delete people. I don't really think you need to worry about it so much. The trick to using C armor, though, is don't be greedy. Don't go for that 3rd stack of Beskar armor. Put the 2 stack on C immediately. Don't worry about it. Otherwise, you will not get that second turn. Like, you're going to use this mostly against Rey, right? So what you don't want to do is have her get to use that whirlwind that she's going to use probably on her, like, 2nd or 3rd turn, right? And every time I have tried to go for that 3rd stack, I've been punished and lost armor and not gotten any stacks on the C and lost the match. Every time I've just put on the 2, it's been enough. So do that. There's one exception when you're using Sith and armor versus a Rey comp. The one that you can't get away with just armor is if it's Rey, Han, and Chewie. Because odds are Han's going to plug your extra character that's not C, and you're probably going to lose, because you're going to lose that character more often than not. In that case, it's better to not use C at all, but if you had to, you probably need to put in both armor and Watt to ensure that whichever one survives Han and Chewie can still get one of the buffs off onto C. Okay, second point. So Fin Po, the famous Fin Po team. It's been a staple of 3v3 for some time now. You know, Zareth calls it the social contract team because you used to put it on defense and you're pretty much saying, I'm going to put these decent guys here on D. You're going to have to use something plus Han plus Chewie to kill it cleanly for 54 banners. And that was the trade. And now people understand that you can use Veers plus range plus either like, oh gosh, no, Veers plus Piet plus range or Dark Trooper, something like that in 3v3. It just absolutely rolls it for 54 banners as well. So you still get to save Han Chewie. So the value of that Fin Po team's gone way on down. However, if you're used to placing that team on D, I do suggest just try Nest and the Resistance Brothers. You don't need a leadership here, because what you're doing is by putting in Nest, you're for sure stopping Imperial troopers, and you know, good luck with some of the other regular counters to the Fin Po team. You want to go after that with JKR? I guess it's a rough go, and any of the other ways, it's more challenging. And so, you know, if you're going to use something like Traya to kill it cleanly, something easier like that, it's not going to be very high banner, because that whole time you're going to have the Resistance Brothers just pounding on your Sith trio. So they'll win, but it just won't be a terribly high banner win. Alright, number 3, the Fate of Padme. So, certainly not on defense, right? Unless you scout them and you see that they always have their Malak on D with the Sith Empire. And I mean always. If you've seen them keep it once for offense, I wouldn't risk it. Because here's the thing, you end up serving up a free 56 banner win. I had a match earlier last season where I was struggling to get good banners against his opponent. He had a pretty decent defense. And then when I went back over, at, a week later after the match, and I could check on swugga.gg about the history, I saw that, he got that with Malik for 56. And it's just because I was lazy when I was scouting him and didn't notice that he sometimes kept his Malik for offense, so that means he was checking his opponents for the presence of Padme on D. And up until that point, I was pretty reliably using Padme on defense as a backwall team. I learned my lesson. Unless I see my opponent pretty much exclusively setting Malik, then I'm just going to keep Padme for offense. So who to use Padme with, to use Padme against on offense? I mean, you can do the Padme JK Snips, Padme JK GK. I feel like the first one with Snips is more powerful in the 3v3 setting, but that could be a really solid BAM team, right? All that protection is very potent, and assuming that you're fighting a BAM team that's got like Queel and IG-11, and you're not dealing with a high probability of 20 birds, right? If it was BAM and Han Chewie, which we'll get to here shortly, that's a completely different story, and that's so much turn meter that I don't think you'd want to risk that. We'll get there though. Fourth point, so 2 kinds of CLS teams. So there's the CLS 3PO and 2PO team, and if you don't have it modded according to Playbook's Bruiser build, which includes crit avoidance arrows on CLS, I'll have a link to it here in my YouTube. I'll make sure to post that. The last time I tried to switch over to it and review it in the stream, it kind of caused issues. But there's a great image there in the Playbook's latest edition. Get on his Discord, get yourself a copy of his Google Sheet, and look at the 3v3 defense tab. There's going to be a great write-up on why he has those 3 characters modded the way he has, and you'll be shocked at the matchups that it can hold against. I'm talking JKRs, I'm talking GAS, I'm talking JTR, which is the premier counter to that team, right? JTR, R2, and BB-8. That's your reliable staple counter to that CLS team. So that's why I say there are 2 kinds of CLS teams. The kind that are modded according to Playbook's Bruiser build, and the kind that's just bait for JTR. And I myself didn't have the mods to spare to mod them in the Bruiser build, but I definitely appreciated it the couple times I saw it because I had to be a lot more careful, and I'd love to have them set up that way myself for next season. So that's a personal goal for me. So yeah, point number 5 about the Bastila lead JML and Watt team. It's not great, guys. It's soloed by Slacker. I mean, even if assuming that JML is faster and gets Efflux off and puts the ability block on Slacker, doesn't matter. When Slacker does get a turn, I mean, he's going to be basicking and building up 2 charges towards his ultimate the whole time, right? So in the worst case scenario, he's still getting charge every turn. You might not be able to, you might stop him from stacking Siphon, yada yada yada, but like, you won't be able to stop it. You can just put it on auto. There's plenty of streamers, myself included, who have shown that you just put it on auto and walk away. And I don't know if that's the same degree on 5 vs 5, I can't recall. But certainly for 3 vs 3, no impediment to a Slacker. And of course, you can, C-armor that, C-watt that. So it's just not that strong of a team. So when clearing Slacker on defense, with or without Daka and Zombie, I found this season that JML, Hoda, and Ezra, or JML, Hoda, and Bastila worked very well for me. Now, obviously, that draws away from the Ray counter when you're doing the Ray versus Ray mirror, because you can use Hoda and Bastila for that, and that's 54 banners if you're controlling the match properly. And the only reason I would ever take from that counter, assuming that, they just didn't have Ray on defense or something, or I had something otherwise lined up, like I could use C armor for that if I was otherwise, bound and determined to do it that way. But I would absolutely say that you just don't need to worry about taking those characters away from Rey if you can use her to solo something like a DR team, any number of really strong teams. Gas too, I suspect you could do just fine. Hadn't tried it yet though, but you know, with the crit avoidance modding, I could see that working out really well. Like, what if it was just something like Rey and R2? You'd be taking R2 away from JTR, but as this bruiser CLS modding takes, you know, it becomes more prevalent, because the results speak for themselves, guys. When you check that out, you'll see. It's super powerful, and more people will do that, because the CLS team is, in itself, pretty good on D, but it just has such obvious and powerful counters, and that when you use the secret sauce of the modding, man, it makes a big difference. So, next point. Number 7, BAM on defense. So, I know there's a lot of people that like to use BAM on offense here in 3v3, and I just don't have experience with it because I like it so much on D. I have had a very rare hold with BAM Queel IG-11, but honestly, guys, I think that one's just out the door. BAM Han Chewie, and then you could do something like Rey Queel IG-11 if you wanted to put Rey on defense. That's what's up. The BAM Han Chewie, though, is definitely what I'm mostly focused on here. That team is, you know, I had an opponent post that on defense around the middle of the season. I think that was Zal Juxalot. Shout out to him, because that really just piped me, man. I've been going up against, you know, BAM Queel IG-11 up to that point, using Boss, Grief, and Mando for 54 banners. Worked like a charm. And then this BAM Han Chewie thing, boom, right from the time that Han opened up, and then triggering triggering Chewie. Excuse me, dry throat. But triggering those autos off of each other feeds into BAM's leadership, which is every time, you know, a scoundrel is dealing damage, you know, all scoundrel allies gain 2% turn meter. So you're having just this runaway turn meter train right from the beginning. You don't get a chance to get your contract off. Not even close. I was shocked by how much I was blown out. So go back on YouTube and watch that match, but I was absolutely shocked how well that worked. So I will be keeping that for the future unless something better emerges. Point number 8, JKO on defense. So I like this team. It's gotten holds for me this season, 5 in my very last match of the season. It was really solid performer. But if you place Jedi Knight Luke, Old Ben, and Shaak T, try, instead of Old Ben, placing GK. And the advantages are you get foresight, you get crit immunity for GK's teammates, and so that helps your team you know, resist against Vader. And this is, you know, especially good if you know your opponent saves Malik for offense, because then you know you wouldn't be setting Padme, JK, GK on defense anyway, so you're not feeling bad about taking GK away from that. And it isn't a character that you would, I don't know, has a lot of uses in a lot of other teams. So I feel like this is a good usage for him, a better usage. It makes it, you know, it doesn't give your Old Ben a home anymore, but I feel like he's a good enough plug-and-play tank that you could use him on for a variety of reasons. Let's see. All right, number 9, track your battles. This is something I've been doing myself here for the last couple seasons, but since it's the first video of its kind, I am going to explicitly mention it here. The best advice I could give to somebody who is trying to improve their performance is to use a spreadsheet to track your attacks. And then when Swugga.gg updates a week later, you just go in and fill in how your opponents attacked you. So do this on a spreadsheet. You record your banners when you win, hopefully. You can track, with red, green color coding, whether you win or drop the battle, and then if you win later, color code that green. You can definitely check out my Discord. That's in my profile. You'll find it here on YouTube. And I have a channel in my Discord called GAC Spreadsheets. I have a separate one for 3v3 and 5v5, but they're pretty simple. They have just the bare information that I think anybody needs. There's a whole lot of streamers with very detailed sheets that let them think about when they're doing their strategic setup, actually clicking and mapping out, you know, this is what my opponent tends to use to attack. This is what I would intend to use to do that. If he did that, you know, for the entire match, back behind the walls that you can't see. I personally find that it's less useful for me to do something like that because you just have to call the shot after you clear that bottom wall, right? So the situation on that bottom rear wall and the top front wall, it's going to be pretty different most of the time. There's a lot of the same teams, but the arrangement makes a difference, right? Depending on whether or not you had to clear them on that bot front wall. So who you're remaining with is pretty unique, and just having a good idea of which teams to use, I think, is better than like pre-mapping everything out and then having to redo all that once you clear that wall. So my sheet's pretty minimal, but I think it gets the job done. You can take a look at it, copy it for yourself, you know, adjust it for your own. I appreciate any feedback you want to give on it, but it's just the bare bones information about, you know, who did what, with what team, how many banners did they drop, how many drops did I drop, how many drops. It's just the bare bones information to kind of learn about yourself. And I also wanted to mention that when I go into GAC, I have 3 resources. I use Zareth's counter sheet. It's a fantastic resource. He has kind of tabs with his older information, which can be useful to check if you're really hard up for a good idea. But then he has later tabs that are, you know, updated closer to the current meta. And there's so many good ideas there. So it's always worth it to check. So that's the first resource I go in with. The second one is just the swugga.gg counter list, because that gives just good probable wins, other factors to feed into your decision making. And then the third resource, which goes back to what we were just talking about, is making your own spreadsheet. And the reason I say that is being able to hit Control F and searching for the matchup that you're fighting. Like if you're, a couple months from now when we're in 3v3 again, and you have to match up against a crew team, and you're like, I know so many ways to beat a crew lobster trooper and Faust. I just can't remember which one gives the cleanest 54. And you could check the other 2 resources I mentioned, but being able to go by your own experience. What did you use last time? And also, when you Control F for like crew, for example, you would see if your opponent had to fight your crew if you set it on defense. And what did they do? Maybe they had an idea you didn't. But having your own personalized resource, I think, is so powerful because it's the most relevant to you. It's the most intimately tied to your GP, right? Like it's going to be the most relevant to the matchups you can expect to see. Whereas the other 2 are more general. They assume that you have the broadest roster possible, that you can do this, that, and the other for certain counters. So the most reliable thing is your own information. I can't preach on that enough. Okay, point number 10, efficiency versus tough defense. At least at a higher GP, it seems that efficiency is the better strategy for 3v3. Saving all 4 GLs means that you have options for full banner counters against other GLs, or you can trivialize non-GL teams. So that's what I mean when I was talking about like Ray versus DR BSF Malik. I mean, so long as you're using your lifeblood to the fullest, you're really under no threat from that team at any point in time, right? They can't fear you, they can't shut you down, so you just get to stack your shield and beat on them with impunity. That being said, the other benefit here is you can practice your non-GL defenses and toughen them up over the course of the season. Obviously, if you have less than 4 GLs, you have to judge for yourself what your roster will allow. Having GLs for offense, though, allows that flexibility on attack, which can be really valuable. and being able to pay attention to how your opponent sets their defenses, because they're going to be similar to you. You're more often than not are going to be finding people in 3 versus 3 that are efficiency minded, just because the incentives are so strong. Having not just a successful attack, but a full banner, really clean attack, is really critical. And I would imagine that no matter, if you're towards the top end of whatever division you're in, that kind of tactic's going to be more and more prevalent, I think. Let's see. Yeah, I was mentioning just in terms of efficiency versus tough defense, my other note was that I think Ray on D is all right. Like if you have excess GLs, like if you have 2+ and you're thinking, what I tend to save for attack is certainly enough that I can clear my opponents, so maybe I can put Ray on D. Okay, I hear that. So Ray on D is all right. I mean, you can put her with Queel IG-11. I like that. But like we were talking about a little earlier here, Han Chewie is tougher to beat. You really would be taking a lot out of their roster to draw C, Armor, and Watt. So they have a strong incentive to not use that counter. So they can use some other GL counter for it, probably Slacker, right? So Slacker +2, I would imagine. And that's going to be like, what, 47 banners? All right. I'm okay with that. You use the GL and you get low banners. All right. So it's a tough trade for them in either case. They lose both of those super buffs and C, a GL anyway, if they decide to go with the Emperor, or they get 47 with Kylo. I'm pretty down with that. I mean, I guess there's safer ways to go with JML, but I don't know. That's one thing I would say is JML didn't wow me so much this season. You could see that the kind of teams that I use JML against, like if I search my sheet right now, if I search for JML, yeah, I was using it sometimes against Slacker Daka Zombie, like I was saying earlier. I've used it against JKL teams. I've used it against Rex Zeris R2. So I used it more often than not to trivialize other teams, right? Yeah, I've definitely used it against Slacker a few times. So I like to save JML for Slacker. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to do it that way, right? There's not a whole lot of teams that can cleanly beat Slacker for decent banners. So let's see here. What's the next one? Finalizer versus Home 1. So point number 11. I learned a painful lesson here this season. It's a sure win, by the way, if you do Finalizer versus Home 1. And I'm talking about having like your TIE Silencer, your Kylo Command Ship, and your First Order Special Forces TIE Fighter. That one. That's the kind of the trick, though, here to how this counter works. The Kylo ship, assuming that you're in R7 and 6-dot mods, let's assume for the whole purpose of the conversation, everybody's in 6-dot mods. All right, we'll talk about relics as we need to, but everybody's in 6-dot mods. So your Kylo's naturally going to be faster than everything on the Home 1 fleet. And it's really important that we get our turns in the right order and beat their ships. So First Order Special Forces TIE Fighter needs to be Relic 6 to beat a double Relic 7 Biston. And that's so important because the turn order needs to be Finalizer puts Hunted on Millennium Falcon, TIE Silencer attacks Millennium Falcon and lands the stun. Then you have Special Forces TIE Fighter use its third ability to call Kylo again and do a double attack and finish off Millennium Falcon. That's how it's supposed to work. If your Special Forces TIE Fighter isn't faster than Biston, and if they have Biggs on defense there in their opener, which most of the time they should, it is generally the better ship for the most situations. Y-Wing's like a useful tool more than a frontline tank, especially for how the rest of the team works with having assists and generating target lock, which restores protection to Biggs. It's a big deal. So if you have that Biston go off before your Special Forces TIE, he's going to use that unresistible target lock ability, his second ability, and then you're stuck behind Biggs, and then you don't get to land your killer combo. And Millennium Falcon won't be able to shake the hunted debuff, but now you're going to have to go after it the old-fashioned way, right? You're just going to have to crush through the rest of the fleet until there's nothing left, which is a tough way to go about it, because if you're like me, when you're using that fleet, I like to go in very undermanned. Like, I don't have any respect for a home one fleet so long as I can outrun it, and now I can, because for the one match I didn't, man, it was a really painful way to lose. And learning that going in as undermanned as I do for that matchup. Like I said, I just do those 3 ships in the opener and Houndstooth on the bench. That's it. And when you're that underhanded and you don't get to do everything in the order that you're meant to do it, you are suddenly in a bit of trouble. And that is one of my lessons. Okay, point number 12. JML, Cam, and Shaak. And for the purpose of the conversation, Cam is going to be modded for offense and health. So I attempted a Slacker solo versus this. This is in my last match of the season, so feel free to check that one out on YouTube. Who was my opponent for that one? We'll give him a shout out because that was pretty clever. Marco Ragnos. He had a fairly clever idea there by putting this on D. So I had been slackering against that Bastila JML Watt team that I mentioned earlier all season long, and I thought I could do the same here. I just completely, underestimated Cam, and I was like, yeah, Cam, Cam's significant, but we're talking about a Relicate slacker here, offense modded. I hit like a truck. Should be good. Should be good. Yeah, it did not work out. So Cam was R8. He had over 11,000 offense. Offense, triangle, and cross. And the AI had him just do his double basic and Ataru form on Slacker, and that pretty much took off all the protection. And let's see, what happened next? Then Shaak T went and used her third to call Cam again, so that's another whack, and we're talking like top of yellow health right now. Then you have JML on his second turn here, because he did F-Lux on the first turn. So on the second turn, he uses his assist to call Cam again, whack. Now we're in red health. Now it's Cam's next turn, and he does the finishing blow with the armor shred ability, and he has the extra 100% damage because Shaak T is there, and she's a Galactic Republic Jedi. So it was shocking to me. It was a complete blowout. Like, Slacker did not have a chance. I will never sleep on that team again. I myself do not have a 7-star Cam yet. I'm 46 shards away, so here's hoping I can get it next go around. If not, no later than June. But that is a hot ticket to get up to R8, put in the offense and health modding. Absolutely just monstrous power under JML, because you have that percent offense. And what's the other effect from Cam that I'm thinking of? He gets 100% extra offense under a condition that he's going to easily have. What is that? Yeah, Ataru form itself, plus 100% offense, 30% defense, penetration, and 20 speed. So you think about that. I mean, you're having 11,000 offense before the match, increase that by 30%, then increase that all by 100%. Or I actually think the other two abilities, I actually think the leadership is probably calculated last there, so the number is less than what I'm saying, but it's still enormous. Like, the offense is incredible. So, wow. Won't underestimate that ever again. So I guess kind of to wrap up here, for the season record, we were 10-2. Last 3v3, we were 8-4. That was our first time getting Kyber. This is our second time. So we're improving things. I feel like my couple of losses, they were against very smart opponents, very smartly laid defenses. But I also think that I ended up losing those matches because I made mistakes. I'm going to review those carefully. I'm going to review all of them carefully before the start of the next 3v3. But we're certainly improving, and I'm making less of the mistakes that I was doing, last season. So we're moving in the right direction. I appreciate all my new followers and subscribers, both here and on Twitch. I really appreciate your support. We've been getting a good number of new subscribers lately, and I really appreciate that. This is a fantastic opportunity to share all the things I've learned, and I look forward to learning more from your comments and your feedback. Together we will all get better at this game, and that's really what I'm trying to do, is get better and offer, you know, a higher class of content, and here's hoping that we keep doing that. So thank you all for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you guys here in just a couple days. I'm very late in posting this video, but I'll see you guys here in just a couple of days for the start of Season 18, 5 vs. 5. We're back to the big leagues, back to the big time, and man, I have made so many modding improvements since then. I have, you know, monstrous new R8s, I have Dark Trooper, I have CLS. It's going to be a good time, guys. I'm really excited to see what we're going to be able to pull off here in 5 vs. 5. I'm not planning on doing any kind of whaling for the Bad Batch. They're cool, and of course they're going to be, if not meta, like in terms of arena, they're going to be, you know, required for something, because the word on the street is Echo is going to be like a legendary character who you get after the first 4 Bad Batch are all unlocked, which makes sense. Not sure how they tie in directly to the GLs that will be coming, but I strongly suspect they will, right? Because at this point in the game, as far as relics, or as far as like relicing characters goes for meeting GL prereqs, we're kind of down to the absolute trash garbage teams. Like in terms of, you know, modern performance, like Jawas, Tusken Raiders, stuff like that. And I don't really see a Galactic Legend coming out of those, do you? So I'm thinking if they are going to be related to the Bad Batch, I strongly think it's going to end up being an Ahsoka and a Maul. They're both Galactic Republic era characters. It kind of seems like we're, you know, gearing up towards that in terms of faction. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I couldn't imagine 2 other characters that are more fitting for Galactic Republic, and not as a faction, but as a, you know, period in time for the game, or for the, you know, for the story. I know there's a lot of talk about what the next GLs will be, so we'll see how it goes. I'm really looking forward to having some kind of word here. Ooh, another guildie just made Cam R8. Man, just monstrous. Oh, yeah, for serious, guys, get your Dark Troopers up to R8, by the way. Just unbelievable damage. All right, guys, I think we're going to wrap this one up. I've been rambling enough. Real pleasure. We'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye.